Hi, welcome to episode 113 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. I'm Laura, also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my hand-spun yarns. And we have a Ravelry group called, you guessed it, The Corner of Knit and Tea. We are currently in the middle of our gift along, which is the annual craft along that I hold in the group. It runs through November and December, and to be eligible to post pictures in the finished object thread, you must finish a project between November 1st and December 31st, and it must be for someone else. We welcome all crafts: sewing, knitting, weaving, spinning. Those are all applicable. So if you are already working on gifts for someone else, they do not have to be holiday gifts, but they do have to be for someone other than you. If you would like to enter them into the giveaway, be sure to check out the details in the threads on Ravelry. And next week, I will do a little thinking about and talking about prizes for that. I have not announced those yet, but there will be a couple. So let me have a think on it this week, and I will come back and let you know next week. So hi, how are you? It is Sunday, November 27th, and I have just returned from spending Thanksgiving week with my family. We usually take the week off and go to Journey to see my family. Normally that is in California. I am from Los Angeles, and so we usually journey there where my parents still live to have the Thanksgiving holidays. But this year we journeyed to Chicago instead, where my sister and her family live, because my sister just had a baby. So we had a wonderful holiday. We got to meet the baby, Miles, and got to play with one of my favorite little people in the world, my niece, Roxy. And overall, it was a bit of a crazy week. A newborn and a 3-year-old will kind of do that to you. Plus, there was lots and lots of cooking. There was playing. There was story time. It was a really nice holiday, but it was really busy. And I'm a little bit pleased to be home where it's quiet today. The light is definitely going to be off on this episode. The weather is overcast and stormy and has been all day. It's only in the... It's in the low 50s, so it's not like super cold, but it is rainy and kind of dark, and has been a good day to stay in. I did some finishing work this morning, so I have 2 finished objects to show you. Finishing work was just buttons and weaving in ends and those kinds of things. And I have a new spin coming up and a bunch of other things to talk about. So let's jump right in. Now that the Thanksgiving holiday is over, we only have a few weeks left until Christmas. And though I have not set up our tree yet or started listening to Christmas music, I did decide to pull out my Christmas tea. So I am having the Downton Christmas tea, which is a black tea with mulling spices. It is one of my favorites, and in fact I'm running low, so I may need to stock up. And I am sipping in my Sip Something Sinful mug, which was a gift from my friend Anna. I think I got this one 2 or 3 years ago, and I have really enjoyed this, and I'm hoping they're not going to make it go away now that Downton Abbey is done once and for all, because it is one of my favorite teas. It's the Republic of Tea that sells these. So yes, working towards Christmas. That is delicious, although a little bit hot, and I think I just burned my tongue. So let's get into the knits, shall we? By far the biggest thing that I finished is my NaKniSweMo sweater. I decided to do the Lady Marple pattern by Nadia Crétin-Lechaine, and that is a cardigan with a simple lace front. It is done all in one piece, and then from the bottom up, and then you separate for at the armholes for the fronts and the back, and then you work the sleeves with a short row sleeve cap down. The yarn that I used for this is yarn that I got at Rhinebeck, so 1 sweater quantity out of the stash already. This is Spirit Trail Fiberworks Zalty, which is 100% Targhee, 210 grams, approximately 600 yards in the colorway Blue Hydrangea. And I used about 1.5 of these. My total yardage with the weighing it is about 910 yards. So that was great. Sorry, I just see a little end peeking out that I'm going to pull back. And I finished and woven ends this morning. It still needs a very good blocking to open up the lace, but you can see this is my sweater. And then I purchased some buttons that are awfully close and match pretty well from Briar Rose Fiber Arts. They are little swirls. Let's see if I can, that's a little bit better. And they're really pretty close. They're not quite spot on. They're a little bit more muted, but they're pretty close. And so I have a finished cardigan, and that is a not bad color estimate. This is a really hard color to photograph, and particularly today, given that the weather's sort of it's hard to see, but it is done, and I've got my sleeves and my cuffs and whatnot, and like I said, it needs a really good blocking, and I will take some really nice finished photos for my project page. I very much enjoyed this knit. It was not super complicated, and that was what I needed this year. And I am super happy to have an Aran weight sweater to wear now that the weather is cold. So that is NaKniSweMo 2016 in the books. Now, I am never eligible for prizes anyway because I am a moderator and I award the prizes. I did not hit 50,000 stitches. As I suspected, I was well short. This is about 36,000 stitches, which makes sense because, like I said, it's an Aran weight and probably like a medium-sized sweater, so it wasn't going to make it. But I am so pleased to have another sweater off the needles and, like I said, to use some of my Rhinebeck stash. So that is the first thing complete. The second finished object this week is last week I showed you some yarn that I was reviewing for Louette. Louette North America generously sent me 2 skeins of Louette Gems worsted. I was actually able to pick between sport and worsted, and I chose the worsted, and I chose it in the colorway Peacock. And I brought all my labels today because I've been short on bringing labels lately. This is Louette Gems worsted. It's 100% merino wool. It is machine washable and dryable. And it is a light worsted weight, 100 gram skein, 175 yards. So I chose to knit the Wheat pattern by Tin Can Knits. It is a nice, simple scarf pattern, and this needs a good blocking as well because the stitch pattern on the scarf, one portion of it is slightly longer and wider than the rest of it, so it makes it curl a little bit. But here is the Wheat scarf finished. As I said, the side of the stockinette ribbed panel in here is a little bit taller and wider than the garter stitch sections. So it curls a little bit, but I think it'll be fine once I block it. And that came out to be a nice, soft, smooshy scarf. I hope my nephew, my older nephew, who is almost 12, Evan, will enjoy this. I am preparing this plus a hat for him for Christmas because he is visiting us and I'm afraid it may be a little bit cold. You just never know in Kansas. My first Christmas here, it was 55 degrees. We've also had Christmases where it's been below 0. So I really, really enjoyed working with this yarn. It is nice and soft and squishy. I had one knot in one skein where I just went ahead and pulled it apart and rejoined the yarn. That was a little bit disappointing, but industry standard is, I think, up to 2 knots per skein. So, and it was only in one of the skeins. So that was a positive. It was not at all splitty. It was delightful to knit. I knit this on a US 8. I got a really nice length scarf and, like I said, super squishy. So this will also be washed and blocked and it will be done, and I will be posting a full review on the blog probably on Wednesday this week. I just need to, like I said, block it, take some photos, and do a little bit of a write-up. But I want to thank Louette North America, and I can actually highly recommend this yarn. I guess I should wait and see what happens when I stick it in the washer and dryer, but so far it has been absolutely lovely, and I would definitely use this for kids knits again in the future. I will have to keep an eye on it because actually maybe Roxy or Miles will get a sweater out of Louette Gems worsted at some point in the not too distant future. So that's my second finished object this week. I have some more things that I've have works in progress. Now that my my major knits for November are done. They were the review of the cashmere, the review of the Luette Gems worsted, and finishing NaKniSweMo. So now I'm turning my attention to what I might like to knit for the rest of the year for December, and sort of how I might like to start January 2017. And I have kind of had some cast-on-itis in the last couple months and have cast on a number of projects that I have not completed. And so I decided that I think December is going to be kind of a finish my works in progress, get the needles clear for the new year. So I'll go through the couple of things that I have on the needles that I consider works in progress. I do have one more small cast on, and then I'll talk a little bit about the things that I didn't bring, but that I'd also like to spend some time on. So one other thing that I did work on a little bit, I took a ton of knitting with me to Chicago, and to be honest, almost all the knitting that I did was in the car on the way up and in the car on the way home. We were just busy. There were kids. There was a really, really sweet baby who really liked to be held when he slept. So during a lot of nap times, I just cuddled with him rather than sat and knit. And so I just did not get as much done as I thought I would, which is fine. I just packed so that I wouldn't run out because, you know, I live in fear of running out. I did bring this one, and to be honest, I probably only put maybe an inch on it. So this is the first thing that needs to be finished this month. This is my niece's sockhead hat. The pattern is the sockhead hat by Kelly McClure. And I had showed you before, I had finished the ribbing, I had started the stockinette, and now I have maybe about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches in stockinette. I will probably knit somewhere between 7 and 9 inches. The pattern calls for 9. I find that a little too slouchy for me, although my niece has a bigger head than I do and a lot more hair than I do, so I might do it for her. This yarn is the Yarn Geek Fibers. I finally remembered to bring the tag, so that's Yarn Geek Fibers, and it is the Super Geek base, which is hand-dyed superwash 3-ply fingering, 75% Corriedale wool, 25% nylon, in the colorway Boxcar Gallery. So there you go. And again, that is Yarn Geek Fibers at yarngeekfibers.com. Sorry. So that is the sockhead hat, like I said, and my plan is to maybe even try and get this done before November is over. I have a couple more days and some lunches and evenings, and that seems like a good idea, so that is what I will try and do. And I have moved that into my stashing all the way Christmas bag. I think this is the only Christmas bag that I have, so I decided as long as I was still knitting some Christmas gifts, I would go ahead and use it. And I believe this is, I don't remember who did this one. I think it might be a Knit and Stitch Bits, but it doesn't have a label on it. That's very strange. So yeah, I got it off of Etsy last Christmas, I think. So, the other thing that I cast on, and actually I have put a little bit of work on it since I saw you. I knit on it a little bit the night before we left because I had packed up all my other knitting, is my hand-spun shawl, which is the Sowerby shawl. Ooh, that's a great representation of the colorway. It is a dark, dark burgundy. This was the hand-spun that I did for Spinzilla. It was 2 braids, or actually 4 braids of Southern Cross fiber in the South African Superfine Merino and the South African Superfine Merino silk, and it was in, oh, I wish I could remember the colorways. It was in Wine Tasting and Promethea. So the premise behind this shawl is that it's rectangular garter stitch one way, and then you pick up and use some short row shaping. So I still have a ways to go on that, but I would love to finish this by the end of the year. So I think this will be a plan this month, and this is just a picture of it. You can't totally see it, but it's kind of a garter stitch bottom and then a short row shaping for the crescent shawl. So, and that is by Noir Knits. It is called Sowerby. And that is what I'm working on, and actually I have a second skein of hand spun to work on that. And this one I know is a Knit and Stitch Bits bag that I love. It is Geisha's, And so that is one of the things that I hope to finish in December. I brought one more thing to show you, and this is really kind of a cheat because there's nothing really to show you. I finished the scarf for my nephew, and I want to do a hat, and I decided to knit him kind of a marled hat. I purchased a skein of on D-Stash of Louette Gems, and actually I thought I was getting worsted and I didn't read very carefully, and what I was getting was fingering weight. So it is the same 100% merino wool, machine washable and dryable, except this is the super fine fingering weight. It's a 50-gram skein for 185 yards. So I purchased this on a D-Stash, and when I got it, I was like, oh, that wasn't really what I wanted. I thought I was getting another skein of the worsted so I could do a matching hat. But I decided that since the peacock is actually very bright, and I don't know if that will be his cup of tea, haha, cup of tea, I think I'm going to hold it stranded with the brown. This is the leftover brown that I used for those mitts for Miles, and it is a treasure. You know what, this one I don't, well, maybe I do. Woohoo! This one is Treasure Goddess Yarns, and it is her 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon base in the colorway Walk the Plank. And that is Treasure Goddess Yarns Treasure Toads Sock Yarn. So it's really hard to tell, but I'm going to hold these two strands together as a fingering weight to create a worsted weight and knit a simple stocking cap that will just basically have a marled look and will kind of match the scarf but not be quite so bright. So that is my final remaining cast on and hope to finish before Christmas. I think I will do this right after I finish the sockhead hat. The sockhead hat has to go in the mail because she is not joining us this Christmas, but Evan is, so this will be under the tree. So that is it, other than, I forgot to bring the other one. Wow, I'm just all over the place. Okay, so still works in progress, but something that I haven't touched are the milkweed socks. That was from Filament Fiber Arts, which was the magazine that I reviewed by Ann Podlesock and Kathleen Dames. And I was knitting the socks, the milkweed socks by Ann Podlesock in a Tweedy yarn that I had. And unfortunately, those are not going to be done by the end of November. I was trying to finish them to enter them into the filament. They kind of had a drawing for people who, the first knit along and drawing for people who knit from the first issue. I am not going to finish those in time. That is fine. That is also something I would like to finish in December. So that gives me 4 projects to work on and finish in December. Let me see, the sockhead hat, the hat for Evan, the Sowerby shawl, and the milkweed socks. And then finally, one of the things that I thought about pulling out, and I don't know that I'll be able to finish it, but I would like to do a bunch more work on it because it got put away and sort of forgotten, is my sock yarn blanket. And I will bring that next week to show you. It is getting fairly large. It is almost to the point where I have to decide whether I'm going to use it as a lap blanket or whether I want to keep going. I still have quite a few minis that I have not put on that, plus I have knit a bunch of projects since then and have some more yarns that I could add in. So I am going to give that some thought and hopefully pull that out and maybe work on that a little bit over the holidays because that will be a nice thing to work on. The one casualty of trying to finish a whole bunch of these whips in December is that I don't think that I'm going to end up knitting a pair of Christmas socks this year, but that is okay because I do have a skein of Christmas yarn for Christmas socks, and I think I will just hold that and make that a New Year's Eve cast on with Little Bobbin's knits and the rest of the world. So, and it is a it's brown and then it's got some multicolored stripes. It is Jinx Yarns Gingerbread House. And it is a self-striping self-striping colorway in sock yarn. So I think what I will do is cast that on for my Christmas Eve knits and I'll finish that, in the first week of the new year or so. So that is what's going to be on my needles in the next couple weeks, and I hope that I will have lots and lots of finished things to show you and hopefully get my needles clear for January 2017. I am starting to think about what kinds of things I might like to knit in the new year, and if I'm going to take on a Harry Potter challenge, and if the kids need more sweaters, and all of those things. So stay tuned for that, although it will be a little whip heavy in the next couple weeks. So I'm going to take a sip of tea and then we'll talk about spinning real fast. I don't have any spinning to show you. I did not spin at all this week, but I am looking forward to digging into a new spin this evening. And that is much cooler now and perfect. So I finished a spin last week before I left and put it up in the shop. It is now up. The shop is open again. I opened it on Black Friday. And for those of you who purchased something, thank you so much. I did not actually run any sales, but since it was a Black Friday, I'm going to go ahead and throw some extra little goodies in your package, so you can expect that when your packages arrive. And thank you for shopping with me. There are a few more skeins in the shop if anyone is interested, and I'm going to try and get a couple more skeins in the next couple weeks into the shop. So the spin for this week is actually kind of a tea-themed spin. It is Southern Cross Fiber in his organic merino, and it is in blues and greens. And I'm not sure that the monitor is going to show you the depth of, it's got a bunch of different kind of swampy greens and a little bit of tan, and then it's got some navy and some real light sky blue, and it's a very pretty braid, and it is called Short and Stout, which is why I said it was tea-themed. So I am going to go ahead and spin this one up this week and put this up in the shop. And then I have a few more fun braids to spin before the end of the year. I was mistaken when I last talked to you because I thought that I was looking at my spin total. Last time or a couple times ago, I talked about where I was in my spinning for the year. And I said I might make 16 pounds this year. I do not think that that is going to happen. I wish it was, but I was a little bit mistaken. Last time I thought it had not counted in the pound that I had spun for Spinzilla, and it had. So I believe I am right around 13 pounds right now, which means I have met my goal for, quote, 52 braids in the year. And so I have a few more braids to spin, and if I'm really feeling like an overachiever, possibly during some of the time I have off, I might try and crank through that pound of the Corriedale Cross for my it'll come to me, Hapshawl project. Sorry, I was like H. I can almost see the word for my Hapshawl project, because I do have, I spun, I think, 4 ounces of the 16. So I have 12 ounces to spin and then 16 ounces to ply. So, but for now, I'm going to stick with a few braids for the shop. So this will be this week's, and if these colors speak to you, keep an eye on it. So I think that's all I have for you today. I hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday if you celebrate. If you are outside of the United States and do not celebrate, I hope that you had a wonderful crafty week. I am pleased with what I got done and hope to kind of snuggle in as the cool weather comes in and continue for the next few weeks and kind of craft the end of the year away, and then look forward to starting with kind of a clean slate for 2017. So, I know what else I've forgotten, and I really owe an apology to the asker of the question. Borgia Yarn asked in the Ask Me Anything thread probably 3 weeks ago now. In fact, it is 3 weeks ago because I have forgotten for 2 consecutive podcasts to address her question. Borgia Yarn asked me how and when I learned to spin. I believe I've covered this on a previous podcast, but if you are just tuning in now or were not around for the earlier podcasts, I will cover it again. Probably in 2006, 2007, I was working in a yarn store in Los Angeles where I used to live. And unfortunately, that yarn store is closed now. It was called Amano Yarn Center, and it was on Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I worked there, and they offered a spinning class. And so it was a spindle spinning class, and it was like 2 or 3 hours one afternoon. And I absolutely cannot remember who taught it, but they had a teacher come in and teach it. And I went in and I bought a really pretty spindle. It was a Kundert spindle, and that to date is still one of my favorite spindles. And unfortunately, they didn't give me as much guidance in what I should start spinning on, just in terms of the best fiber to spin on. So I picked a really beautiful merino silk. And if you have spun before, you know that merino silk is kind of slippery and a little bit hard to spin and not great for beginners. So I'm going to preface the story that way. Basically, it was like between a 2 and 3 hour class, and they taught us to park and draft on the spindle. Which I had middling success at. And then they had us wind off our singles and learn how to Andean ply. And when you wind singles off a spindle, there is a way to do it around your wrist that sort of creates a bracelet. It is kind of the same effect as having a center pole ball where you ply from both ends of the ball, and then basically you have no leftovers because it meets in the middle wherever it meets. It looks slightly different. Anyway, we made a plying bracelet, and we learned how to Andean ply. And I made some boat rope and found the fiber really hard to work with, and did not enjoy it very much. And so I shoved it in a box. And then I moved to Kansas in 2008, and it sat in a box in the back of the closet. Sometime in early 2010, I had a friend who started to spin, and so I pulled out that leftover merino silk and gave it to her. And I was pretty determined never to spin again, but I really loved the spindle. It was beautiful, and I really didn't want to get rid of it. And then I joined a group on Ravelry it was a swap group. It's called Spin or Die Swap Group, and I was pretty active there for a while. And that's a group where people swap fiber and spinning materials and yarn and all kinds of things. And within a couple weeks of joining the group, somebody sent me, just from the kindness of their heart, a braid of fiber. And she joked that they were going to make a spinner out of me before my time there was through. And so I decided that I would pull out my spindle and I would give it one more try, and that if I didn't like it, I was going to destash the spindle and any fiber and anything else that I had. And I sat down with Abby Frankmon's book, Respect the Spindle, and something about spinning just clicked at that point. I watched videos, I was able to draft, I was able to control the fiber a little bit better, and I think part of that is because one of the first braids I spun on this time around was Falkland, and I think the second braid was BFL, Blue-Faced Leicester, and both of those are longer stapled and much easier to draft and spin and not as slippery. They're much better fibers for beginners. So that's sort of how I learned to spin. I taught myself on spindles. Like I said, I learned to spin in the spring of 2010, like May-ish. I did Tour de Fleece on a spindle that year. And come fall, I was kind of ready to think about a wheel. And I actually live near Yarn School in Kansas. Yarn School is, it is sort of a, Harveyville is a place out in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And it's kind of mid to western Kansas. It's about 2.5 hours from here. And a couple has taken over what was the Harveyville elementary school and high school. And they have turned it into sort of an arts collective. They do a bunch of workshops out there, and sometimes they have artists in residence. And one of the things that they host is called Yarn School. And they host it twice a year, once in April and once in September. And it is a long weekend of fiber-filled fun. You get to dye fiber, you get to spin fiber, you get to learn how to spin on a wheel, or you get to learn new techniques. And it is just a long weekend where you can immerse yourself in crafty pursuits. And one of the things that Yarn School and Harveyville, the arts collective out there, does is they rent spinning wheels, and if you end up buying the wheel that you rent, part of your rental fees are put towards your purchase price. So I rented one of the wheels that they had for demo and in use out at Yarn School, and I ended up purchasing it for Christmas that year. So I basically learned to spin in May of 2010, and by Christmas that year I had a wheel. And I opened my shop, I think in 2012 or 2013. So I have had it for a while, and I have been spinning for a while, and I went to Yarn School in, let me think about this, I think spring of 2012. And spring of 2012 was when I felt like I really sort of crossed over the hump into being a much better spinner. So I think it was just the consistent practice and having people watch what I was doing and make a few comments. And I feel like I finally sort of hit my groove at that point. So that is the story of how I learned to spin. Thank you for hanging in there. I'm sorry that I forgot to answer that for a couple weeks. If you have any other questions, you are always welcome to post them in the Ask Me Anything thread, and I try to be diligent about answering them when I'm not busy and crazy and forgetful. So if you ask me anything there, I will try and address it in the next podcast. So I think it is time to conclude for today. I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye!